If you own an old game console, I genuinely think you should think twice before selling it. And I don't just mean your PS2. I'm talking about your PS4, your Xbox One, your original Switch, even your current PS5 or Xbox Series X when the next generation eventually arrives. Because something really strange is happening in gaming right now. Normally technology works like this. A console launches, it's expensive. A few years pass, manufacturing gets cheaper, the console gets cheaper, and eventually a newer, better console replaces it. But right now, we're watching basically the opposite happen. A 6-year-old PlayStation 5 costs more than it did a few years ago. Xbox just raised console prices again. Nintendo has already announced another price increase for Switch 2. Physical games are starting to disappear, all digital stores are closing, subscriptions are becoming increasingly important, cloud gaming comes with its own limitations, and new hardware is getting harder to justify. So I want to make one argument in this video. Your old consoles may be worth a lot more to you than whatever somebody is willing to give you for it. And I don't mean financially, I mean what that little box actually lets you do. Your console is already sitting there, you already paid for it. Your controllers work, your games work, your saves are there, you understand the system. And most importantly, there are probably dozens or even hundreds of amazing games you've never played on it. I think gaming has trained us to think like phone buyers. New thing comes out, old thing becomes useless. Sell old thing, buy shiny new thing, and repeat. But game consoles don't really work like phones. A PS4 doesn't suddenly forget how to play Bloodborne because the PS5 exists. Your Switch doesn't suddenly become bad at Mario Odyssey because Switch 2 exists. And Xbox 360 games doesn't suddenly become like, alright, Xbox is done, guess we're going to PlayStation. Okay, but you know what I mean. Good games don't expire just because newer hardware exists. Actually, one of my favorite statistics I found while researching this video is that a huge percentage of gaming time is already spent in older games. Not new releases, old games. Minecraft, GTA, Fortnite, older RPGs, old Nintendo games, games we've been playing for years. So if we are already playing old games, why are we so desperate to get rid of the hardware that plays them? New consoles aren't getting cheaper. This is the part that really made me think about this. The PS5 launched in 2020 and instead of becoming some cheap $300 machine 6 years later, Sony has increased the price. Again. Xbox has also increased hardware pricing, Nintendo has announced that Switch 2 is going up too. And this is happening because the components inside these machines are becoming more expensive. Especially memory and storage. Part of that comes from enormous demand coming from servers and AI infrastructure, I mean we all know it. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I can predict what RAM prices will look like in 3 years. Maybe the problem improves, maybe it gets worse. Nobody actually knows, but what we do know is this. The assumption that you can sell your current console now and cheaply buy another one later is becoming a lot less safe. Imagine selling your PS5 for $250 because you think, whatever, I will buy another one later. Then 2 years later you discover that replacing it costs twice what you expected. Suddenly that trade-in doesn't look very smart anymore. Physical games are becoming more important, not less. And this is the part I think gamers need to pay attention to. Sony has officially announced that starting in January 2028, new PlayStation games will no longer be produced on physical discs. That is massive, and no, that doesn't mean your existing PS4 and PS5 discs suddenly stop working. That's actually exactly why I think older hardware becomes interesting. Because if you own a PlayStation with a disk drive, you own a machine capable of accessing this enormous existing physical library. Games you can find used, games you can borrow, games you can lend, games you can collect, and games where multiple shops and individual people can compete on price. Compare that with a completely digital console. If one storefront controls access to a game, there isn't a second-hand copy. Your friend can't hand you their download. You're buying access through the ecosystem. And Nintendo is already experimenting with another version of the idea on Switch 2. Game key cards.
Da, da, da. What?
You still receive a cartridge, you still put it in your console, but some of those cartridges don't actually contain the game. They contain the key that lets you download the game. That doesn't make them automatically terrible. They can still be shared and resold, but it shows us where things are moving. The box is in your hand and the game itself are becoming two different things. We've already seen stores close. This isn't some hypothetical future 20 years away. Nintendo already closed new purchases on the Wii U and 3DS eShops. Xbox closed the Xbox 360 marketplace, and Sony has now announced closure for purchasing games directly through the PS3 and Vita stores. To be fair to these companies, previously purchased games haven't just instantly disappeared, and that's important. I'm not saying your digital library is going to vanish tomorrow. That would be stupid. What I am saying is no digital storefront exists forever. Hardware gets old, payment systems change, servers get retired, licenses expire, games get delisted, and eventually companies move on. But if I have a working old console sitting in my room, I have another way to access an entire era of gaming, and that has value. Old consoles can become better with age. This is obviously where better gaming comes in, because you guys already know what happens to old hardware when the community gets its hands on it. Look at the original Nintendo Switch. A normal Switch is already a fantastic console, but homebrew has turned compatible systems into these ridiculous little machines. Custom themes, save management, performance tools, streaming, different operating systems, emulating of legally obtained retro libraries, entire features Nintendo never originally designed the machines to have. I have literally made videos turning a Switch into things it was never supposed to be. And the funny thing about modding communities is that hardware sometimes becomes more interesting after the manufacturer has moved on. And I mean, devs understand it better, documentation improves, homebrew gets better, replacement parts appear, people discover new exploits, and suddenly the console you were about to sell for $100 becomes one of the coolest devices in your house. Obviously, do your research, modding can carry risks, online services can ban modified systems, and piracy is a completely different conversation. But preserving hardware and exploring what you legally own is one reason I absolutely love this side of gaming. It gives old machines another life. Backwards compatibility makes keeping hardware even weirder. Now, you might say, okay but why keep my old Switch if Switch 2 can play my Switch games? Fair question, Bobby. And this is where I'm not going to tell everyone to become a console hoarder. If the new console does literally everything you need and you desperately need the money, sell it, of course. I'm not saying everybody needs 17 consoles in their bedroom, but backwards compatibility actually proves another point. The industry knows old games matter. PlayStation 5 plays almost the entire PlayStation 4 library. Xbox Series consoles support most Xbox One games and a selection of Xbox 360 and original Xbox games. Switch 2 supports compatible original Switch software. We keep building new machines specifically so people can continue accessing old libraries, because the software has value long after launch. So before selling the original hardware, ask yourself what you're actually giving up. Maybe it's nothing, or maybe it's a disk drive, maybe a specific controller, homebrew compatibility, a local multiplayer setup, an older firmware, a discontinued game, a peripheral that doesn't work properly on the new machine, or simply a second console that works without moving your main setup around. Cloud gaming shows why hardware ownership still matters. Cloud gaming is cool. Seriously, the technology is kind of insane. You can take a weak little device and stream a high-end PC game through the internet. I love that this exists. But here's what makes me nervous about replacing hardware with it completely. You don't own the computer. You're borrowing access to someone else's computer, and that company sets the rules. Paid GeForce Now plans now include 100 hours of premium playtime per month. For most people, maybe that's completely fine. But think about what that means philosophically. If I own a console, nobody tells me, you've played enough PS2 this month. I turn it on and I play. That's such a boring feature that we don't even call it a feature. But maybe we should. Your old console is a little time capsule. Now, this might sound a little dramatic, but I genuinely mean it. Every console preserves a specific version of gaming. The menus, the controller, the accessories, the games. A Wii isn't just a slow Switch. A Nintendo DS isn't just a bad Steam Deck. A PS3 isn't just a PS5 with worse graphics. They are different machines, designed around different ideas, and once those machines disappear, recreating the exact experience isn't always easy. That's why people buy retro hardware 20 years later. It's why game preservation matters, and it's why people end up saying, man, I wish I never sold that thing.
What?
There are already more great games than you can ever play. Maybe this is the nicest part of this whole story. Gaming isn't actually becoming bad, we have Decades of incredible games, thousands of them. If tomorrow every company announced no new games for 2 years, I genuinely don't think I would run out of things to play. Hell, my backlog would probably celebrate. We've become so obsessed with what's next that sometimes we forget how unbelievably good what we already have is. You can buy old games cheaply, discover franchises you've never touched before, replay childhood favorites, try homebrew, fix old hardware, collect physical copies, play with friends locally, and enjoy gaming without needing every new piece of hardware the second it launches. Maybe the future of affordable gaming isn't constantly moving forward. Maybe part of it is looking backward. So should you never sell a console? That would be ridiculous. If you need money, sell it. If you genuinely never use it, sell it. If the replacement perfectly covers everything you care about, sell it. Someone else gets a cheap console, that's good too. What I'm saying is, don't automatically sell it just because something newer exists. Before you do, ask yourself this: can I replace this machine cheaply? Does it play physical games I care about? Games I might even want to sit down and play with my future kids one day? Does it support something newer hardware doesn't? Could it become interesting for homebrew later? Because gaming is changing. Hardware is getting more expensive, physical releases are shrinking, old storefronts are closing, cloud gaming puts more control in somebody else's hands. And somehow, that boring old console sitting underneath your television is starting to look pretty good. So yeah, maybe don't sell it yet. And actually, I want to hear from you. What console did you sell that you wish you still had? Because I guarantee the comment section is about to be painful. I am you, this is Better Gaming, don't forget to smile, and I hope I'll see you in the next video. Peace!